8 years. 8 years Claire lived like a ghost in her own home, enduring every cutting remark, every contemptuous look from the man she once loved. Tonight, at his lavish birthday party with hundreds of distinguished guests watching, he did the unforgivable, publicly humiliated her in front of everyone. Claire ran from that mansion, ran into the freezing Chicago rain, not knowing where to go, with no one left to trust. And then she met him, Adrian Moretti, the most dangerous man she'd ever encountered, and the only one who saw her pain. Follow this story to the end. Hit like and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The crystal chandelier threw fractured light across 500 faces, all of them smiling, all of them strangers pretending to be friends. Claire Bennett stood at the edge of the ballroom in a dress that cost more than most people made in a month, feeling like she was drowning in champagne and expensive perfume. 8 years. 8 years of this. She watched her husband work the room with the ease of a man born into power and raised to wield it without mercy. Evan Bennett, the golden boy of Chicago finance, moved through the crowd like a shark through shallow water. Handsome, in that sharp, dangerous way that made women stupid and men careful, every gesture calculated, every smile rehearsed, and every word out of his mouth tonight designed to cut her deeper than the last. "There she is," Evan's voice rang out across the sudden quiet that fell when he tapped his champagne flute with a knife. "My beautiful wife. Claire, darling, come here." Claire's stomach dropped. She knew that tone, knew the particular edge in his smile when he looked at her across a crowded room. This was going to hurt. Her heels clicked against marble as she made her way toward him, every eye in the ballroom tracking her movement. The dress, red silk, backless, chosen by Evan's stylist because Evan's wife needed to look the part, suddenly felt too tight, too revealing, too much like a costume she'd never agreed to wear. Evan's arm slid around her waist when she reached him, his fingers pressing just hard enough against her ribs to remind her who was in control. "Isn't she stunning?" he said to the crowd, his voice warm with affection that didn't reach his eyes. 8 years married to this woman, and I still can't believe my luck. Polite laughter rippled through the guests. Claire forced her mouth into something resembling a smile. "Of course," Evan continued, his grip tightening. "She's terrible with money. Absolutely hopeless. Just last week she donated $50,000 to some animal shelter without even asking me." He laughed, shaking his head with theatrical exasperation. "Can you imagine? $50,000 for stray dogs." More laughter now, louder. Claire felt heat crawling up her neck. "I keep telling her," Evan said, turning to look down at her with that smile that made her want to run, "that if she wants to play philanthropist, she should at least learn how to read a budget first. But what can you do?" He shrugged, addressing the crowd again. "I married her for her looks, not her brains." The laughter became a roar, not cruel exactly, just comfortable. The easy amusement of people who'd never been humiliated in public, watching someone else get torn apart for their entertainment. Claire stopped breathing. Evan raised his glass. "To my beautiful, generous, financially incompetent wife. I wouldn't trade her for anything. Well," he paused, grinning, "maybe for someone who could balance a checkbook." The ballroom erupted. Applause, whistles, someone shouted, "Here, here!" from the back. And Claire felt something inside her crack clean through. She pulled away from Evan's grip, stumbling back a step. He caught her wrist, still smiling, his fingers like a vice. "Where are you going, darling?" "Let go of me." Her voice came out quiet. Too quiet for anyone but Evan to hear over the noise. His smile didn't waver. "Don't make a scene. Let go." "Smile," he hissed through his teeth, his public face never slipping. "You're embarrassing me." Claire yanked her arm free hard enough to make him falter. The crowd's laughter died into confused murmurs. Evan's smile finally cracked, replaced by something cold and furious. "Claire!" She didn't wait to hear the rest. She turned and walked, not toward the exit near the stage where everyone could watch her leave, toward the service door half hidden behind a velvet curtain, the one the catering staff used. "Claire!" She walked faster. Through the door, down a marble corridor lined with mirrors that showed her a woman she barely recognized. Red dress, perfect makeup, eyes wild with something that felt like terror and rage tangled together. Behind her, Evan's voice rose, sharp with command. "Claire, get back here. Now!" She ran, past servers carrying trays of hors d'oeuvres, past a coat check attendant who stared at her with wide eyes, past the lobby with its towering floral arrangements and security guards who knew better than to stop Evan Bennett's wife. Out into the Chicago night. The rain hit her like a slap, cold, hard, soaking through the silk dress in seconds and turning her carefully styled hair into a mess of wet tangles. She didn't care. She kept moving, her heels skidding on wet pavement, no destination in mind except away. Away from Evan, away from that ballroom full of people who'd laughed while he tore her apart, away from the last 8 years of her life. She made it 3 blocks before her heel caught in a grate and snapped clean off. Claire swore, kicked off both shoes, and kept walking barefoot through puddles that soaked the hem of her dress and turned her feet numb. Somewhere behind her, car horns blared, the city's usual symphony of chaos, but all Claire could hear was the roaring in her ears and Evan's voice echoing in her head. I married her for her looks, not her brains. Her hands were shaking. No, her whole body was shaking. She needed to stop, needed to think, needed to figure out where the hell she was going because she'd left without her purse, without her phone, without anything except the clothes on her back and the knowledge that she couldn't go home. Home. What a joke. That house had never been home. It had been a cage. A cafe materialized out of the rain-blurred darkness. Small, quiet. The kind of late-night place that catered to insomniacs and people with nowhere else to go. Warm light spilled through the windows, and Claire could see people inside nursing coffee cups and staring at laptops. Normal people. Living normal lives. She pushed through the door, dripping wet and barefoot, and every head in the cafe turned to stare. Claire froze. A woman behind the counter, college-aged with purple streaks in her hair, blinked at her. You okay?" No, she wasn't okay. She was standing in a cafe at 11 o'clock at night in a soaked designer dress with no shoes and no way to pay for anything because her husband controlled every dollar she'd ever had access to. "I'm fine," Claire heard herself say. The barista didn't look convinced. "You want some coffee? On the house. You look like you need it." Charity. From a stranger who probably made minimum wage. Claire wanted to cry, or laugh, or scream. "Thank you," she whispered. She took a seat in the corner as far from the windows as possible and wrapped her arms around herself. The cafe was warm, but she couldn't stop shivering. Shock, probably. Or the adrenaline crash finally hitting. The barista brought her coffee in a chipped mug. "Seriously, are you okay? Do you need me to call someone?" Who would she call? Her parents were dead. She had no siblings, no real friends. Evan had made sure of that over the years, slowly isolating her until the only people in her life were his people, his colleagues, his country club acquaintances, his world. "I'm fine," Claire said again. "Really, thank you for the coffee." The barista hesitated, clearly unconvinced, but eventually retreated back behind the counter. Claire wrapped her hands around the mug and stared into the dark liquid. Her reflection stared back, distorted and broken. What now? She couldn't go back to the house. Evan would be there, and he'd be furious. He didn't tolerate defiance, didn't tolerate anything that made him look weak or out of control. And she just walked out on him in front of 500 people. A hotel. She could go to a hotel. Except she had no money. No credit cards. They were all in her purse, which she'd left at the venue. And even if she had them, Evan monitored every transaction. He'd know the second she tried to use one. Claire's breath came faster, panic clawing its way up her throat. She was trapped. Even running, she was still trapped. The cafe door opened. Cold air and rain swept in. Claire didn't look up. Footsteps approached her table. Stopped. "Rough night?" The voice was male, deep, calm in a way that made something in Claire's chest unclench slightly, even though she had no reason to trust strange men in cafes. She looked up. He was tall. Dark hair pushed back from a face that was handsome in a dangerous way, sharp jaw, dark eyes, the kind of presence that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. Expensive suit, perfectly tailored, though the rain had left dark spots on the shoulders. Not someone who belonged in a cafe like this any more than Claire did. "I'm fine," she said automatically. His mouth quirked. Not quite a smile. "You're barefoot, soaking wet, and shaking hard enough to spill your coffee. You're not fine. Claire looked down at the mug in her hands. Coffee was indeed sloshing over the rim with each tremor that ran through her body. I don't need help, she said. Didn't offer any. He pulled out the chair across from her without asking permission and sat down. Just made an observation. Claire should have told him to leave, should have said something sharp and dismissive. But the truth was, she didn't want to be alone right now. Didn't want to sit in this cafe with nothing but her own spiraling thoughts for company. So she said nothing. The man studied her for a moment. Not leering, not pitying, just looking, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. Adrian, he said finally. Moretti. He said it like she should recognize the name. She didn't. Claire. Just Claire? For now. He nodded, accepting that. You running from something, Claire? Someone. Husband? Her laugh came out bitter. That obvious? The tan line on your ring finger's pretty fresh, and you've got that look. What look? The one people get when they finally realize the door was never actually locked. Adrian leaned back in his chair, completely at ease despite the bizarre circumstances. They just had to be desperate enough to try the handle. Claire stared at him. Who the hell are you? Someone who knows what it looks like when a person's life falls apart. He tilted his head slightly. The question is what you're going to do about it. I don't know, Claire admitted. The words felt like surrender. I don't have any money, no phone, nowhere to go. I walked out with nothing. So go back. She flinched like he'd slapped her. Adrian's expression didn't change. I'm not saying you should. I'm saying that's your option if you don't figure out another one pretty fast. Because running without a plan just means you end up right back where you started. Claire's hands tightened around the coffee mug. I can't go back. Then you need help. From who? I don't have anyone. You have me. The words hung in the air between them. Claire searched his face for some sign of what he wanted from her, what the catch was. Because there was always a catch. Why would you help me? She asked. You don't even know me. No, Adrian agreed. But I know men like your husband, and I know what it takes to survive them. He pulled a card from his jacket pocket and set it on the table between them. You want out? Actually out. Not just hiding in a cafe until you get too scared to follow through. Call that number. Claire looked at the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering, just a name and a phone number. No company, no title. What do you get out of this? She asked. Maybe I'm just a good Samaritan. You're not. His smile was sharp. No, I'm not. He stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. But my reasons don't change the offer. You want help getting free of your husband? I can provide it. No strings, no expectations, just a way out. People don't do things for nothing. You're right. They don't. Adrian turned toward the door, then paused. But sometimes the payment isn't what you think it is. Sometimes helping someone who deserves it is payment enough. He left before Claire could respond, disappearing into the rain as quickly as he'd appeared. Claire sat alone in the cafe, staring at the card on the table. Adrian Moretti. The name meant nothing to her, but the offer did. It meant possibility. It meant maybe she didn't have to crawl back to Evan and beg forgiveness for humiliating him. Maybe she didn't have to spend the rest of her life trapped in that house, playing the role of the beautiful, stupid wife who couldn't balance a checkbook. Maybe there was a door. She picked up the card, turned it over in her hands. The embossing caught the light, making the letters seem to shift and change. The barista appeared at her table. You need anything else? A phone, Claire heard herself say. Can I borrow your phone? By the time dawn broke gray and cold over Chicago, Claire had made her decision. She'd spent the night in the cafe, nursing coffee the purple-haired barista kept refilling without comment, watching the rain slow to a drizzle, watching the sky lighten from black to charcoal to the muddy gray of a city morning. Thinking about 8 years, about every small cut Evan had made until she'd learned not to bleed where people could see, about the woman she'd been before him, younger, stupider, so in love she'd mistaken control for protection, about who she might become if she stopped being afraid. When she finally called the number on Adrian's card, a woman answered on the second ring. Professional, calm, like she took calls from desperate women at 6 a.m. all the time. Mr. Moretti is expecting your call, the woman said. Where are you? 3 hours later, Claire was sitting in the back of a town car with tinted windows, wearing clothes that actually fit, jeans, a sweater, shoes with her feet in them, watching the city slide past. The driver didn't speak, didn't ask questions, just drove with the kind of competent silence that suggested he'd done this before. They left the city proper and headed into the suburbs. Not the suburbs Claire knew, with their manicured lawns and McMansions. These were older, quieter, money that didn't need to announce itself. The car turned onto a private road lined with old-growth trees. Iron gates opened as they approached, then closed behind them with a finality that made Claire's pulse jump. The estate that appeared at the end of the drive was massive. Stone and glass and architectural angles that suggested someone had paid a fortune to make it look effortlessly elegant. Gardens stretched out in every direction, winter bare, but clearly maintained with obsessive care. Claire had grown up around money, had married into more of it. But this was different. This was the kind of wealth that didn't need to prove anything. The car stopped at the front entrance. The driver opened her door. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Moretti is waiting inside." Claire stepped out onto gravel, her new shoes crunching with each step toward the massive front door. It opened before she reached it. Adrian stood in the doorway, dressed more casually now, dark slacks, a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked different in daylight, older than she'd thought, maybe late 30s, and there was something in his face that hadn't been visible in the cafe's dim light, something hard and worn and careful. "You came," he said. "You knew I would." "Hoped." He stepped aside, gesturing her in. "Come on, we need to talk." The interior of the house was all clean lines and expensive understatement, art that Claire suspected was real, furniture that looked uncomfortable and probably cost more than a car, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking grounds that went on forever. Adrian led her to a study lined with bookshelves and dominated by a desk that could have doubled as a dining table. He gestured to a chair. Claire sat. Adrian moved to the bar cart in the corner. "It's 7 in the morning," Claire said, "and you've had a hell of a night." He poured 2 fingers of something amber into a crystal tumbler and handed it to her. "Drink it. You're still shaking." She was. Claire hadn't realized it, but her hands were trembling again. She took the glass and drank. Whiskey. Good whiskey. It burned going down and settled warm in her empty stomach. Adrian poured one for himself and leaned against the desk. "So, let's talk about what you want." "I want a divorce." "That's the easy part." Claire laughed, sharp and humorless. "You've never met my husband. Evan Bennett, 42, managing partner at Sterling Klein Investments. Net worth approximately $200 million, most of it tied up in assets and investments. Vindictive as hell when he doesn't get his way." Adrian took a sip of his whiskey. "I've met 100 men like your husband. They're all the same once you know what you're looking at." "How do you know all that?" "I make it my business to know things." He set his glass down. "Your husband controls everything. The money, the house, your social circle, every piece of your life. A normal divorce, he'll drag it out for years, bleed you dry with legal fees you can't afford, make you look unstable, make you crawl back and beg." Every word landed like a punch because every word was true. "So what's the alternative?" Claire asked. "You stay here, under my protection. My lawyers handle your divorce, and they're very good at what they do. We make sure your husband can't touch you, can't control you, can't make you disappear into the kind of settlement that leaves you with nothing." "Why would you do this?" Adrian's expression didn't change. "Because I can." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting right now." He pushed off the desk and moved to the window, looking out over the grounds. "Here's how this works. You stay in this house. You don't leave without security. You don't contact your husband. You let my people handle the legal side while you figure out who you are when you're not being his wife. And in return, nothing. No strings, no payment, no expectations." He turned back to face her. "When it's done, you walk away free. Where you go and what you do after that is your business." Claire studied him, looking for the lie, the hidden trap, the thing that would make this too good to be true. "People don't help strangers for nothing," she said. "Already told you. I'm not doing it for nothing." "Then what? Let's just say I have my reasons and leave it at that." Adrian's voice carried a note of finality. "You want my help or not, Claire? Because if you don't, I'll have my driver take you anywhere in the city you want to go. No judgment, no hard feelings. She could leave, walk out right now, figure it out on her own somehow. Or she could trust this strange, dangerous man who'd appeared in a cafe like something out of a fever dream and offered her exactly what she needed most. Freedom. I'll stay, Claire said. Adrian nodded once. Good. I'll have someone show you to your room. Get some sleep. We'll talk more when you're not about to fall over. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. While you're here, you're safe. No one touches you. No one threatens you. That's a promise. Understand? The intensity in his voice made something in Claire's chest tighten. I understand. Good. He left, and a moment later a woman appeared in the doorway. Older, professionally dressed, with kind eyes and the air of someone who ran things efficiently. Miss Bennett? I'm Mrs. Chen. I manage the household. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your rooms. Rooms, plural. Claire followed Mrs. Chen through hallways that seemed to go on forever, up a sweeping staircase, down another hallway, lined with more art and more windows and more evidence of wealth. So old, it didn't need to announce itself. Mrs. Chen opened a door. Your suite. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting room. There's a closet with some basics until we can arrange for your things. If you need anything at all, just press the call button by the bed. The suite was bigger than the entire apartment Claire had lived in before she married Evan. Decorated in soft grays and creams, with a bed that looked like something from a hotel magazine, and windows overlooking gardens that seemed to stretch to the horizon. Thank you, Claire managed. Mrs. Chen smiled. Rest, dear. You're safe here. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Claire stood in the middle of the room, still wearing the borrowed clothes, still shaking slightly from exhaustion and shock and the weight of everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. She'd left her husband, had run into the rain with nothing, had met a stranger who'd offered her salvation with no apparent strings attached, and now she was here, in a mansion, with lawyers and security and a man named Adrian Moretti who knew things about her husband that he shouldn't and helped people he didn't know for reasons he wouldn't explain. Claire moved to the window. The gardens stretched out below, perfectly maintained despite the winter cold. Beyond them, she could see the edge of a forest. And beyond that, nothing but distance. For the first time in 8 years, Claire Bennett was exactly where her husband couldn't reach her. She pressed her hand against the glass and felt something crack open inside her chest. Not breaking. Opening. Like a door she'd thought was welded shut, finally giving way. She was free. Or at least she was about to be. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Claire let herself believe that might actually be true. Claire woke to sunlight streaming through windows she didn't recognize and panic slamming into her chest before she'd fully opened her eyes. Wrong room, wrong bed, wrong everything. Then memory caught up. The rain, the cafe, Adrian, the estate, and the panic shifted into something else. Not relief exactly. More like the hollow exhaustion that came after spending too long braced for a blow that never landed. She sat up slowly. The bedroom was exactly as she remembered it. Elegant, expensive, belonging to someone else's life. A clock on the nightstand read 2:47 p.m. She'd slept for almost 7 hours. Claire pushed back the covers and padded barefoot to the bathroom. Marble floors, a shower big enough for 3 people, toiletries still in their packaging lined up on the counter like someone had raided a luxury hotel. She caught sight of herself in the mirror and stopped. The woman staring back looked like hell. Makeup smeared, hair tangled, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. The borrowed sweater hung loose on a frame that had gotten too thin over the past few years without her noticing. When had she stopped eating properly? When had Evan's comments about her weight become the voice in her head deciding whether she deserved lunch? Claire turned away from the mirror and turned on the shower as hot as it would go. 20 minutes later, she emerged feeling marginally more human. Clean, at least. The closet misses. Chen had mentioned turned out to be a walk-in the size of Claire's childhood bedroom, stocked with basics in her size. Jeans, sweaters, underwear still in the packaging, even shoes. Someone had been very thorough very quickly. Claire dressed in jeans that actually fit and a soft gray sweater that didn't feel like a costume, then stood in the middle of the suite trying to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. A soft knock at the door made the decision for her. Miss Bennett? Mrs. Chen's voice, gentle and professional. Mr. Moretti asked me to let you know there's food in the kitchen when you're ready, and his attorney will be arriving at 4 to discuss your situation. Attorney. Right. Because she was getting divorced, because she'd actually done it, actually left. Claire opened the door. Mrs. Chen stood in the hallway with the same kind smile from earlier. Thank you, Claire said. I'll be down in a minute. Take your time, dear. The kitchen's on the main floor. Just follow the hallway to the stairs and turn left. You can't miss it. Mrs. Chen disappeared down the hall with quiet efficiency, leaving Claire alone again. The house was even more intimidating in daylight. Claire made her way down the sweeping staircase, trying not to feel like an intruder. Everything was too perfect, too expensive, too much like walking through a museum where she wasn't supposed to touch anything. She found the kitchen exactly where Mrs. Chen had said. Massive, modern, all granite and stainless steel and windows overlooking a terrace that probably hosted parties for 100 people. Adrian sat at the island in the center reading something on a tablet, a cup of coffee at his elbow. He looked up when she entered. You're awake. Apparently, Claire hovered in the doorway, suddenly unsure. Is it okay that I'm here? It's your house for as long as you need it. He gestured to the espresso machine that looked like it required an engineering degree to operate. Coffee? Or Mrs. Chen left sandwiches in the fridge. I can get it? I know you can. I'm offering anyway. Claire made her way to the island and slid onto a stool across from him. Coffee would be good. Adrian stood and moved to the machine with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. How'd you sleep? Like the dead. Good. You needed it. He worked the espresso machine with practiced efficiency. My attorney's coming at 4. Sarah Voss. She's handled difficult divorces before. High-profile, high-conflict cases. She'll walk you through your options. Options? Like there were multiple ways this could go. Like she had any control over what happened next. Evan's going to fight this, Claire said quietly. He doesn't lose. He won't let me just walk away. He doesn't get a choice. Adrian set a perfect cappuccino in front of her. That's the point of having lawyers who know what they're doing. Claire wrapped her hands around the cup. It was warm and solid and real. Why are you doing this? We covered this last night. No, we didn't. You gave me non-answers and changed the subject. She met his eyes. I need to know what you want from me. What this costs. Because nothing's free. Adrian leaned against the counter, studying her with that same careful assessment from the cafe. You want the truth? Yes. I knew a woman once, long time ago. She was married to a man who made her small, made her feel like she was nothing without him. And I watched her try to leave and fail because she didn't have the resources or the support or the ruthlessness to make it stick. His expression didn't change, but something in his voice went flat. She went back to him, had no other choice, and he spent the next 5 years making her pay for trying. Claire's throat tightened. What happened to her? She died. The words were matter of fact, but his jaw was tight. Car accident, single vehicle, ran off the road into a tree at 60 miles an hour on a clear day. The implication hung in the air between them. I'm sorry, Claire whispered. Adrian shook his head. Don't be sorry. Just don't make the same mistake. Don't go back because you think you don't have options. You do. You have me. You have my resources. You have lawyers who will make sure your husband doesn't get to win this time. And if I'm not her, if I'm just someone you met in a cafe, then I'm still helping you. He picked up his coffee. Call it paying a debt forward. Call it whatever you want. Doesn't change the offer. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to dig deeper, but the look on his face told her she'd gotten as much truth as she was going to get. Okay, she said finally. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you meet Sarah. She's terrifying. Sarah Voss turned out to be a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expensive suit, carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than Claire's wedding dress had. She swept into Adrian's study at exactly 4 o'clock, nodded at Adrian, and turned her full attention to Claire. Mrs. Bennett, I've reviewed the preliminary information Mr. Moretti provided. Let's talk about your marriage. They sat around the massive desk. Claire in one of the leather chairs, Sarah across from her, Adrian standing by the window like he was giving them space but not leaving entirely. Sarah pulled out a legal pad. How long have you been married? 8 years. Children? No. Assets acquired during the marriage? Claire's mind went blank. I don't know. Evan handles all the money. I don't even know what we have. Sarah didn't look surprised. Do you have access to bank statements, investment accounts, property deeds? No. Credit cards in your name? Yes, but Evan monitors everything. He gets alerts for every purchase. Sarah made a note. Does he have your passwords, email, social media, phone? Yes. The admission felt shameful. He set everything up. Said it was easier if he managed it. Of course he did. Sarah's tone was dry. What about employment? Do you work? No, Evan wanted me to focus on supporting his career, hosting dinners, attending events, that sort of thing. So you have no independent income? No. And no access to marital funds without his knowledge? No. Sarah set down her pen and looked at Claire directly. Mrs. Bennett, I'm going to be blunt. Your husband has spent 8 years making sure you're completely dependent on him financially, socially, and legally. That's not an accident. That's a strategy, and it means this divorce is going to be ugly. Claire's hands tightened in her lap. How ugly? He'll claim you're unstable, irrational, that you abandoned the marriage without cause. He'll drag out the proceedings as long as possible to bleed you dry with legal fees you can't afford. He'll make you look incompetent so the judge questions your ability to manage your own affairs. Sarah's expression was calm, clinical. And if you don't have the resources to fight back, he'll win. But I do have resources. Claire glanced at Adrian. Right? You do, Adrian confirmed. Sarah works for me. Her fees are covered, and we have investigators who can dig into your husband's finances and find things he doesn't want found. Sarah nodded. That's the advantage here. Your husband thinks you're helpless, thinks you'll come crawling back within a week because you have nowhere else to go. We're going to use that against him. How? We file for divorce immediately. We request temporary support and exclusive use of the marital residence. We freeze joint accounts and subpoena his financial records. We move fast and hit hard before he realizes you're serious. Sarah pulled out a stack of papers. But I need you to understand something. Once we do this, there's no going back. Your husband will retaliate. He'll make your life hell. The only way through is forward. Claire thought about last night. About standing in that ballroom while Evan tore her apart for entertainment. About 8 years of small cruelties that had added up to a life she didn't recognize. I'm not going back, she said. Sarah smiled. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of a predator scenting blood. Good. Let's destroy him. The next 3 hours were a blur of paperwork and questions. Sarah went through everything. The timeline of the marriage, specific incidents of control or abuse, assets Claire knew about, assets she suspected existed. Every detail mattered. Every date. Every conversation she could remember. By the time Sarah left, Claire's hand was cramping from signing documents and her head was pounding. Adrian walked Sarah out, then returned to the study where Claire still sat, staring at the stack of papers on the desk. You okay? He asked. I don't know. Claire rubbed her temples. Is it always like this? The beginning's always the worst. Once we're in motion, it gets easier. When will Evan be served? Tomorrow morning. Sarah's process server will catch him at his office. Adrian moved to the bar cart. You should probably not be anywhere near a phone when that happens. Claire's stomach twisted. He's going to lose his mind. Let him. He can't touch you here. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Adrian poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. This place is a fortress. Security on every entrance, cameras everywhere, my people know their jobs. Your husband can scream all he wants, he's not getting to you. Claire took the glass but didn't drink. Who are you, Adrian? Really? Someone with money and resources who doesn't like men who hurt women. That's still not an answer. It's the one you're getting. He sat down across from her, his own glass in hand. Look, my life before you got here doesn't matter. What matters is that you're safe, and we're going to make sure you stay that way. Everything else is noise. You're used to this, Claire said slowly. Helping people, protecting them. This isn't the first time. No, it's not. Then what? A door slammed somewhere in the house. Small running feet pounded down a hallway. A child's voice, high and bright, echoed through the halls. Papa! Papa! I'm home! Adrian's entire demeanor changed. The careful control cracked, and something warm and real showed through. He set down his glass and stood just as a small whirlwind burst through the study door. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, with dark curls in Adrian's eyes. She launched herself at him without hesitation. Hey, princess. Adrian caught her easily, lifting her up. How was school? Good. We made volcanoes and mine exploded the biggest. She caught sight of Claire and stopped mid-sentence, suddenly shy. Who's that? This is Claire, Adrian said gently. She's staying with us for a while. The little girl studied Claire with the frank curiosity of children. Why? Because she needed somewhere safe to stay. Like when the birds come to our garden because their tree fell down? Adrian's mouth quirked. Something like that. Oh. The girl squirmed until Adrian set her down, then approached Claire with the kind of caution reserved for interesting strangers. I'm Lena. Hi, Lena. Claire managed to smile despite the shock of discovering Adrian had a daughter. Your dad's right. The volcano thing sounds cool. It was very cool. Mrs. Patterson said mine was the best because I added extra baking soda. Lena tilted her head. Are you sad? You look sad. Lena, Adrian said quietly. A gentle warning. It's okay. Claire's throat felt tight. I'm a little sad, but I'm getting better. Lena nodded seriously. Papa says sometimes people need time to feel better. Like when Mama died. We were sad for a long time. The air in the room went still. Adrian's expression closed off completely. Lena, why don't you go find Mrs. Chen? She made those cookies you like. Okay! Lena brightened immediately, the sadness forgotten with the resilience of children. She waved at Claire. Bye, Claire. I hope you feel better soon. She disappeared as quickly as she'd arrived, leaving silence in her wake. Claire looked at Adrian. He'd turned away, staring out the window with his shoulders tight. I'm sorry, Claire said quietly. I didn't know you had a daughter. Why would you? His voice was carefully neutral. We just met. The woman you told me about, the one who died. That was your wife. Yes. The single word carried the weight of years. Claire wanted to say something, wanted to offer comfort or understanding or anything that might ease the tension radiating off him. But what comfort could she possibly offer? She was a stranger living in his house, running from her own disaster. She's beautiful, Claire said finally. Lena, she seems happy. She is, mostly. Adrian turned back to face her. Her mother died 3 years ago. Car accident, just like I said. And I've spent every day since making sure Lena never feels like the world isn't safe. Is that why you do this? Help people? Partly. He picked up his whiskey and downed the rest in one swallow. And partly because I can. Because I have the resources and the connections and the sheer bloody-mindedness to make sure men like your husband don't always win. What was her name? Claire asked. Your wife. Sophia. The name came out rough. And that's all I'm saying about her tonight. You want to know more? Ask me another time when I'm not already feeling like hell. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. Adrian set down his glass with more force than necessary. You didn't do anything wrong. You're here because your husband's a bastard and you finally had the guts to leave. That's not something to apologize for. Claire stood, suddenly exhausted all over again. I should let you be with your daughter. She'll be fine with Mrs. Chen for a bit. But Adrian didn't stop her when she moved toward the door. Claire, she paused. Tomorrow's going to be hard. When Evan gets served, he's going to call, going to text, going to try every way he can think of to get to you. You need to be ready for that. I won't answer. Good. And if he shows up here, which he won't because he'll never find this place, but if he does, you let security handle it. You don't engage. You don't try to reason with him. You understand? Claire nodded. I mean it, Claire. Men like Evan are dangerous when they lose control. And you leaving? That's the ultimate loss of control. I know. She'd known it when she ran, had known it in the cafe. had known it every moment since. That's why I'm here. Adrian's expression softened slightly. Yeah, that's why you're here. Claire left him in the study and made her way back upstairs. The house felt bigger somehow, less like a museum and more like a place where people actually lived. A place where a little girl exploded baking soda volcanoes and talked about dead mothers with the kind of matter-of-fact acceptance that came from processing grief too young. Back in her suite, Claire stood at the window and watched the sun set over the gardens. Somewhere in the city, Evan was probably just getting home from work, probably wondering where she was, maybe starting to get angry that she hadn't come crawling back yet. Tomorrow, he'd find out she wasn't coming back at all. Claire's phone, the one she'd abandoned in her purse at the venue, was still out there somewhere, but Sarah had given her a new one. Prepaid, untraceable, with exactly 3 numbers programmed in: Adrian, Sarah, and estate security. She picked it up, turned it over in her hands, thought about all the years she'd carried a phone that Evan monitored, every call tracked, every text read, every movement documented. This phone was hers, just hers. It felt like freedom. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Chen, probably, bringing dinner or checking to make sure she hadn't fled into the night. But when Claire opened the door, Lena stood in the hallway, holding a stuffed rabbit that looked well-loved and slightly worse for wear. "Hi," the little girl said. "Papa said you might be lonely. I get lonely sometimes too." Claire's chest tightened. "I'm okay, sweetheart, but thank you for checking. Do you want to have dinner with us? We're having spaghetti. Papa makes really good spaghetti." The offer was so genuine, so without agenda, that Claire felt tears prick her eyes. "I'd like that," she said. "Thank you, Lena." Lena beamed. "Good, come on. Papa's in the kitchen and Mrs. Chen says the water's boiling." She grabbed Claire's hand with the unself-conscious affection of a child who'd decided they were friends and pulled her back downstairs. The kitchen had transformed. Music played from hidden speakers. Adrian stood at the stove with an apron tied around his waist, actually cooking. Mrs. Chen set the table while humming along to the music. It looked like a family. Adrian glanced up when they entered. "Lena, I told you not to bother Claire." "I didn't bother her. I invited her to dinner." Lena climbed onto a stool at the island. "She said yes. She's allowed to say no." "I know, but she didn't." Lena swung her legs happily. "Claire, do you like garlic bread?" "I do," Claire said, still standing in the doorway, feeling like an intruder all over again. "Good. Papa makes the best garlic bread. He puts lots of butter on it." Adrian met Claire's eyes across the kitchen. A silent question. "Are you okay with this?" Claire nodded. She wasn't sure she was, actually. Wasn't sure she could sit through a family dinner without breaking down. But Lena was looking at her with such open happiness that saying no felt impossible. "Sit," Adrian said, gesturing to the island. "Food will be ready in 5 minutes." Claire sat. Mrs. Chen poured her a glass of wine without asking. Lena chattered about volcanoes and school and her best friend Emma, who was learning to play piano. And Adrian cooked, comfortable in his own kitchen, completely different from the dangerous man who'd appeared in a cafe and offered salvation. The spaghetti was actually good. Homemade sauce, fresh pasta, garlic bread that dripped butter. They ate at the kitchen island instead of the formal dining room, and Lena kept up a running commentary about everything and nothing. It was so normal it hurt. Claire hadn't had normal in 8 years. Hadn't had dinners that didn't come with subtle criticism or pointed silence. Hadn't had anyone ask her opinion about anything that mattered. "Claire?" Lena's voice cut through her thoughts. "Are you okay? You're crying." Claire touched her face. Sure enough, tears streaked her cheeks. "I'm fine," she managed. "It's just, this is really nice. Thank you." Lena reached across and patted her hand with the kind of solemn comfort children offered. "It's okay to be sad sometimes. Papa says feelings are allowed." "Your papa is very smart." "I know." Lena went back to twirling spaghetti. "He knows everything." Adrian snorted. "I definitely don't know everything." "You know most things. That's different." They finished dinner, and Lena helped clear the table with the kind of practiced routine that came from doing this every night. Mrs. Chen took over dishes, shooing them all out of the kitchen. "Bath time, princess," Adrian said. "Can Claire read me a story?" "Lena, it's okay," Claire heard herself say. "If that's okay with you." Adrian looked at her for a long moment. "You don't have to." I know. I want to. 20 minutes later, Claire found herself sitting on the edge of a child's bed in a room decorated with stars and bookshelves overflowing with stories. Lena, fresh from her bath and smelling like lavender soap, snuggled under a blanket covered in moons. "What do you want to hear?" Claire asked, looking at the bookshelf. "The one about the lost princess. It's my favorite." Claire found the book, started reading, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, felt like maybe she was exactly where she was supposed to be. When she finished, Lena was almost asleep, her eyes heavy. "Claire?" she murmured. "Yeah, sweetheart? I'm glad you're here. The house is happier when there are more people in it." Claire's throat closed. "I'm glad I'm here too." She turned off the light and found Adrian waiting in the hallway. "She likes you," he said quietly. "She's easy to like. She doesn't trust everyone. Hasn't since Sophia died." He ran a hand through his hair. "But she trusted you in about 5 seconds flat. Kids are good judges of character." "Yeah." Adrian looked at her. Really looked at her. "You didn't have to do that. The dinner, the story. Lena gets attached easily. When you leave, I'll make sure she knows it's not because of her," Claire said. "I promise." Adrian nodded slowly. "Okay, good." They stood in the hallway, the house quiet around them. Somewhere a clock ticked. Outside, wind rattled the windows. "Tomorrow's going to be hell," Adrian said finally. "I know. But you're going to get through it. And the day after. And the day after that. Until one day you wake up and realize you don't think about him first thing anymore." "Did that happen for you? With Sophia?" "Eventually." His smile was sad. "Took longer than I wanted, but it happened." "I'm sorry," Claire said again. "Stop apologizing for other people's damage." Adrian's voice was gentle. "Get some sleep. Sarah will want to meet with you again in the morning to go over what happens after the service." "Okay." Claire went back to her suite, changed into borrowed pajamas, lay in the massive bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, Evan would be served. Tomorrow, the real fight would start. And for the first time since she'd run into the rain, Claire let herself believe she might actually win. The call came at 9:47 a.m. Claire was in the kitchen with Lena, watching the little girl demolish a stack of pancakes while explaining in excruciating detail why butterflies were better than moths, when Adrian's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen. His expression didn't change, but something in the way he straightened told Claire everything she needed to know. "It's done," he said quietly. Claire's fork clattered against her plate. Her stomach dropped like she'd stepped off a cliff. Evan had been served. "Papa, you're not listening," Lena complained through a mouthful of pancake. "I said, butterflies have prettier wings." "You're right, princess, they do." Adrian's voice was steady, calm, but his eyes were on Claire. "Why don't you finish breakfast and then we'll work on that puzzle?" "The one with 1,000 pieces?" "That's the one." Lena beamed and went back to her pancakes, oblivious to the tension crackling through the air. Adrian crossed to where Claire sat frozen. "Breathe." "I can't." "Yes, you can. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Come on." Claire forced air into her lungs. Once. Twice. The roaring in her ears didn't stop. "He knows," she whispered. "He knows I'm serious." "Good. Let him know." Adrian's hand landed on her shoulder, solid and grounding. Sarah's team served him at his office 20 minutes ago, in front of his secretary and 2 junior partners. Very public. Very humiliating. Claire thought about Evan's face when he realized what was happening, the cold fury that would settle over his features, the way his jaw would tighten when he was too angry to speak. He's going to call. Probably. He's going to... Claire's breath hitched. He's going to say terrible things. Let him. You don't have to listen. Adrian squeezed her shoulder once, then let go. Your old phone's off. This new one only has numbers you need. He can scream into the void all he wants. But even as Adrian said it, Claire's new phone, sitting on the counter next to her coffee, began to ring. Unknown number. They both stared at it. How does he have this number already? Claire's voice came out thin. He doesn't. He's calling every number associated with you he can think of. Adrian picked up the phone and powered it off without hesitation. Problem solved. You can't just... I can, and I did. Sarah has her own line. If there's an emergency, she'll reach me and I'll tell you. Everything else can wait. Lena looked up from her pancakes, syrup on her chin. Who was calling? Nobody important, Adrian said smoothly. Finish your breakfast. The next 3 hours were a special kind of torture. Claire tried to focus on normal things, helped Lena with the puzzle, drank coffee she couldn't taste, watched Mrs. Chen move through the house with her usual efficiency. But her mind wouldn't stop spiraling. Evan knew. Evan had been served. Evan was somewhere in Chicago right now, reading through divorce papers that laid out exactly how much he'd controlled her, how much he'd isolated her, how much damage he'd done. And he was planning his response. Sarah arrived just before noon, her expression grim. We need to talk, she said without preamble. Conference room, now. Adrian had a conference room. Of course he did. Down a hallway Claire hadn't explored yet, all glass walls and a table that could seat 20. Sarah spread documents across it like battle plans. Your husband responded faster than I expected, she said. His attorney filed a countermotion an hour ago. They're claiming you abandoned the marriage without cause, that you're mentally unstable, and that you've been having an affair. Claire's blood went cold. That's insane. I would never. I know, it's a standard play. Make you look untrustworthy, so the judge questions everything you say. Sarah pulled out more papers. They're also requesting a psych evaluation and asking for an emergency hearing to freeze all marital assets until your mental state can be assessed. Can they do that? They can try. Won't work, but they can try. Sarah's smile was sharp. Because we anticipated this. We already filed our own motions requesting a full forensic accounting of all marital finances, exclusive use of the residence, and a restraining order preventing your husband from contacting you directly. Adrian leaned against the window, arms crossed. What about the affair allegation? Flimsy. They're basing it on the fact that Claire left the party and didn't come home, claiming she must have gone to a lover. Sarah looked at Claire. Did you? No, I went to a cafe, then here. Can anyone corroborate the cafe? The barista. She gave me coffee. Let me use her phone. Good. We'll get a statement from her. Sarah made a note. What about here? Who knows you're staying at Mr. Moretti's estate? Just the people who work here, Adrian said. And they're discreet. Keep it that way. If your husband finds out where you are, he'll try to use it against you. Claim impropriety. Claim you're being coerced or manipulated. Sarah turned back to Claire. Which brings me to my next question. What's your relationship with Mr. Moretti? Claire blinked. What? Your husband's attorney will ask. The judge will ask. I need to know what you're going to say. He's helping me. That's all. How did you meet? At a cafe? The night I left. And he offered to let you stay here out of the goodness of his heart? The skepticism in Sarah's voice was sharp enough to cut. Claire looked at Adrian. He met her eyes, expression unreadable. Yes, Claire said. He did. And there's nothing romantic or sexual between you? No, nothing. Sarah studied her for a long moment. Good. Keep it that way. Any hint of impropriety and your husband will bury you with it. The meeting went on for another hour. Sarah walked Claire through what to expect. Court dates, depositions, financial disclosures. Every step of the process designed to be invasive and exhausting. Your husband will try to drag this out, Sarah warned. Make it too expensive, too painful, too public for you to continue. That's how men like him win. They don't beat you in court. They beat you down until you give up. I'm not giving up. I know. But knowing it and living through it are different things. Sarah started packing up her papers. The next few weeks are going to be hell. He's going to attack your character, your credibility, your sanity. He's going to try to make you small again. You need to be ready for that. Claire's hands were shaking. She hid them under the table. I'll be ready. After Sarah left, Claire stood at the conference room window and watched her car disappear down the drive. You okay? Adrian asked from behind her. No. Fair enough. He's going to win, isn't he? The words came out flat. He has more money, better connections, more power, and I have nothing. You have me. Claire turned to face him. For how long? Until this gets too messy, too complicated? Until helping me starts costing you something that matters? Adrian's jaw tightened. I don't abandon people in the middle of a fight. Everyone does. Eventually. I don't. He moved closer, his voice quiet but absolutely certain. I told you, you're safe here. That doesn't change because your husband throws around accusations or files motions or tries to make you look crazy. You're staying until this is done, however long that takes. Why? Claire's voice cracked. Why do you care this much? Because I couldn't help Sophia, couldn't save her from the bastard she married, couldn't stop her from going back. Adrian's expression was raw. But I can help you, and I'm not going to waste that chance because your husband wants to play games. Tears burned behind Claire's eyes. She blinked them back furiously. I don't know how to do this, how to be strong enough. You already are. You left. That's the hardest part. Adrian's hand came up, hesitated, then settled on her shoulder. Everything else is just not going back. A crash echoed from somewhere in the house. Then Lena's voice, high and distressed. Papa! Papa! I'm sorry! Adrian was moving before Claire could process what happened. She followed him through the house to the study where Lena stood surrounded by pieces of what used to be a very expensive vase. I was trying to reach the book on the high shelf, and I knocked it over, and it broke, and I'm sorry. Lena's eyes were huge and wet with tears. Adrian crouched down to her level. Are you hurt? No? Then that's what matters. It's just a vase. But it was Mama's favorite. Something in Adrian's face crumpled and rebuilt itself in the space of a heartbeat. I know, Princess, but she'd care more about you being safe than about a vase, okay? Lena nodded, sniffling. Okay. Go find Mrs. Chen. Tell her we need a broom. Lena scurried off, leaving Claire and Adrian alone with the shattered remains. That was Sophia's? Claire asked quietly. Yeah, from our honeymoon in Florence. Adrian stared at the pieces. Lena's right. It was her favorite. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. But his voice was tired. It's just stuff, just pieces of the past that don't change anything. Claire knelt and started picking up larger shards. Still, I know it mattered. Everything from before matters. That's the problem. Adrian joined her, gathering broken porcelain with careful hands. You spend 3 years trying to move forward, and then your daughter breaks a vase, and suddenly you're right back in Florence watching Sophia haggle with the vendor in terrible Italian. She sounds like she was something. She was. Brilliant and stubborn and completely fearless. Adrian's mouth twisted. Right up until the fear caught up with her. What was his name? Her husband. Marcus Dalton, hedge fund manager, charming as hell in public, monster behind closed doors. Adrian's hand stilled on the broken pieces. I worked for his firm. That's how I met Sophia. She was his perfect wife, beautiful, educated, said all the right things at all the right times. Like me. Like you. Adrian looked at her. She wanted to leave, asked me for help. And I tried. Got her a lawyer, set up a safe place for her to go. But Marcus had resources and connections, and he made the divorce so brutal she couldn't take it. After 6 months, she dropped the case and went back to him. And then 2 years later, she drove her car into a tree at 60 miles an hour on a sunny afternoon. Adrian's voice was flat. The police ruled it an accident, mechanical failure. But I knew. Everyone who knew her knew. Claire's chest ached. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, be free. Adrian stood, carrying the broken pieces to a wastebasket. That's what Sophia couldn't do. But you can. You will. Mrs. Chen appeared with a broom and dustpan, took one look at Adrian's face, and efficiently cleaned up the rest of the vase without comment. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around her. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind against the windows sounded like someone trying to get in. Evan was out there, somewhere, furious and planning. And she was here, safe, protected. But for how long? The new phone Adrian had given her sat on the nightstand, powered off. But Claire knew that wouldn't stop Evan from trying to reach her. He'd find ways. He always did. She must have dozed eventually because when she opened her eyes again, pale gray light was filtering through the windows. 5:43 a.m. Claire gave up on sleep and padded downstairs in borrowed pajamas and bare feet. The kitchen was dark and quiet. She made coffee by feel, finding comfort in the simple routine of it. The espresso machine Adrian had used so easily the day before defeated her completely, so she settled for the regular coffee maker tucked in the corner. Can't sleep either? Claire jumped, coffee grounds scattering across the counter. Adrian stood in the doorway, dressed in workout clothes, hair damp with sweat. You scared me, she said, pressing a hand to her racing heart. Sorry. Went for a run. He grabbed a towel from somewhere and wiped his face. Couldn't sleep, too much in my head. Yeah, same. They moved around each other in the pre-dawn quiet, making coffee, not talking. It should have been awkward. Instead, it felt almost comfortable. Two people who couldn't sleep dealing with insomnia together. Claire finally got the coffee maker working, poured 2 cups, handed one to Adrian. Thanks. He leaned against the counter, still catching his breath from his run. You know, you don't have to hide up in your room all the time. This is your house, too, for now. I don't want to be in the way. You're not. Lena likes having you around, and Mrs. Chen's thrilled to have someone to fuss over besides me and a 7-year-old. Claire wrapped both hands around her mug. What happens if this takes months? If the divorce drags on and I'm just here, living in your house, disrupting your life? Then you're here for months. My life's been disrupted by worse things. Adrian, I mean it, Claire. Stop waiting for me to change my mind or decide you're too much trouble. That's not happening. He set down his coffee. You want to know the truth? Having you here is good for Lena. She's been lighter these past 2 days than she's been in months. Smiles more, talks more. That's worth more than any inconvenience. She's a good kid. She is. Takes after her mother. Adrian's expression softened. Sophia would have liked you, would have recognized the steel under all that fear. I'm not steel. I'm barely holding together. That's what steel looks like before it's been tested. You think you're fragile, but you're not. You're just discovering how strong you actually are. Before Claire could respond, her phone, still sitting on the counter where Adrian had left it the day before, began to vibrate. Once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. Text messages. Adrian and Claire both stared at it. Don't, Adrian said quietly, but Claire was already reaching for it, turning it on. Watching the screen flood with notifications. 23 missed calls, 47 text messages, all from unknown numbers, but she knew who they were from. Her hands shook as she opened the messages. Claire, we need to talk. Call me. This is ridiculous. Come home. You're making a mistake. You know you can't survive without me. I'll give you until tonight. If you're not back by then, I'm freezing all the accounts. You're being irrational. Everyone at the party is asking about you. You're embarrassing me. Fine. You want to play games? I'll play. But you won't like how this ends. The messages went on, some pleading, some threatening, all of them designed to make her feel small and scared and desperate, and it was working. Claire's breath came faster. The kitchen seemed to tilt. Adrian took the phone from her hands and powered it off again. I told you not to look. I had to know. No, you didn't. You needed to know he was angry, which we already knew. Reading his attempts to manipulate you doesn't help. He's going to freeze the accounts. Let him. You're not using them anyway. Sarah already filed for temporary support. The judge will make him pay. He's going to make this so much worse. He's going to try. That's different. Adrian set the phone down out of her reach. This is what men like Evan do. They can't accept losing control, so they escalate. Make bigger threats, louder threats. But at the end of the day, he's just a bully who's scared you're actually going to get away. Claire pressed her hands flat against the counter, trying to steady herself. I don't feel like I'm getting away. I feel like I'm drowning. You're not. You're swimming. It just doesn't feel like it yet because you're still learning how. I hate this. I hate that he still has this much power over me, that just seeing his words makes me want to hide. That's normal. You spent 8 years learning to be afraid of him. You're not going to unlearn that in 3 days. Adrian moved closer. But every day you don't respond, every day you don't give him what he wants, you're taking that power back, piece by piece. Claire looked up at him. His face was serious, certain, completely convinced she could do this. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe she was strong enough to survive whatever Evan threw at her. What if I'm not? She whispered. What if I break? Then you break, and then you rebuild. That's allowed. Adrian's voice was gentle. You don't have to be perfect, Claire. You just have to keep going. Footsteps on the stairs interrupted them. Lena appeared in the doorway, dragging her stuffed rabbit, hair wild from sleep. Why are you both awake? She asked, rubbing her eyes. It's still dark. You couldn't sleep, Adrian said. Why are you awake? Bad dream. Lena patted over and climbed onto a stool, rabbit clutched to her chest. I dreamed the house was empty, and everyone was gone. Adrian's expression shifted into something soft and pained. We're right here, Princess. Not going anywhere. Promise? Promise. Lena seemed satisfied with that. She looked at Claire. Were you sad again? A little, Claire admitted. Papa makes really good pancakes when people are sad. That's what he does for me. Adrian's mouth quirked. Is that a hint? Maybe, he sighed in mock exasperation. Fine, pancakes, but you're helping. Lena brightened immediately and scrambled off the stool to wash her hands. Adrian looked at Claire. You too. No sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. If we're making pancakes at 6 in the morning, everyone helps. And somehow, Claire found herself at the counter mixing batter while Lena measured ingredients with the kind of intense concentration only children could manage. Adrian worked the griddle, flipping pancakes with practiced ease, and Mrs. Chen appeared eventually to make the kitchen run more efficiently. By the time the sun actually rose, they'd made enough pancakes to feed an army. They ate at the island, passing syrup and butter, and Lena told increasingly elaborate stories about her stuffed rabbit's adventures. It was domestic and strange and completely surreal, and for a few minutes, Claire forgot to be afraid. The next 2 weeks were a blur of motions and counter-motions, legal documents and court dates that got scheduled and rescheduled. Sarah became a permanent fixture, showing up every few days with new developments. Evan fought every single thing. The temporary support, the asset freeze, the restraining order. He hired a team of attorneys and made it his mission to make the divorce as painful as possible. And true to his word, he froze every account Claire had ever had access to. Doesn't matter, Sarah said when Claire panicked. The judge ordered him to maintain your standard of living during the proceedings. He's in contempt if he doesn't. But Evan didn't care about contempt. He cared about control, and every frozen account, every delayed payment, every legal maneuver was designed to remind Claire that he still had it. The restraining order didn't stop him from trying to reach her. Flowers showed up at the estate. Claire had no idea how he found the address. Letters arrived, gifts, all of them laced with the same message. Come home. Stop this. You're making a mistake. Adrian had security intercept everything before it reached Claire, but she knew it was happening. Could feel Evan's presence pressing against the edges of her new life like a shadow that wouldn't fade. She started having nightmares. Waking up in the middle of the night convinced Evan was in the room, that he'd found her, that he was going to drag her back. Adrian found her one night at 2 a.m., sitting on the terrace in her pajamas, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. How long have you been out here? He asked, shrugging out of his jacket and draping it over her shoulders. I don't know. An hour? Maybe more. It's freezing. I know. He sat down next to her on the cold stone bench. Didn't tell her to go inside, just sat. Bad dream? He asked eventually. Same dream. He finds me, drags me back, and I can't fight because I never could. That's not going to happen. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Adrian's voice was absolutely certain. Because I won't let it. Because Sarah won't let it. Because you're not the same woman who ran into the rain 3 weeks ago. Claire pulled his jacket tighter around herself. I don't feel different. You are. You're here. You're fighting. You're not giving up even though he's throwing everything he has at you. Adrian looked at her. That's different. It doesn't feel like enough. It will. Eventually. They sat in silence, watching their breath form clouds in the cold air. Somewhere in the darkness, security moved through the grounds, protecting, watching. How did you do it? Claire asked. After Sophia died, how did you keep going? Lena. The answer was immediate. She needed me. So I got up every morning and made breakfast and drove her to school and pretended I wasn't dying inside. And eventually the pretending became real. I don't have anyone who needs me. Lena needs you. Asks for you every day when she gets home from school. Wants you to read to her, help with homework, watch her practice piano. Adrian smiled slightly. You've become part of her routine, part of her life. That matters. Until I leave. Even then, you'll be someone who showed her kindness when she needed it. That doesn't stop mattering just because you move on. Claire thought about Lena, about the little girl who decided they were friends with the instant trust of children, who brought her stuffed rabbit when she was sad and insisted on sharing pancakes and asked her opinion on everything from homework to which color was prettier. I'm going to miss her, Claire said quietly. When this is over. She'll miss you too, but that's okay. Missing people is better than never having them at all. They stayed on the terrace until the cold became unbearable, then went inside where the house was warm and safe, and Evan couldn't reach them. 3 days later, everything changed. Claire was in the study with Lena, helping her with a book report, when Adrian's phone rang. He'd been working at his desk, half listening to Lena's enthusiastic summary of the book she'd chosen. He looked at the screen, answered immediately. What is it? Even from across the room, Claire could hear Sarah's voice, tight, urgent. Adrian's expression went cold and dangerous. When? He asked. Then, how many? Then, I'm on my way. He ended the call and looked at Claire. Get Lena upstairs, now. Claire's heart stopped. What's wrong? Evan hired people, private investigators. They've been watching the estate for the past week. Adrian was already moving, pulling open a drawer in his desk, retrieving something Claire couldn't see. Sarah just got word they're planning to move tonight, to grab you when you leave the grounds. The world tilted. He's going to kidnap me? He's going to try. Adrian's voice was absolutely calm, deadly calm. But he's not going to succeed because we're ready for him. Ready? How? Claire, get Lena upstairs, lock the door. Don't come out until I tell you it's safe. He looked at her, his eyes hard. Do you trust me? Yes. Then go. Now. Claire grabbed Lena's hand. The little girl looked confused but didn't argue as Claire pulled her toward the stairs. What's happening? Lena asked as they climbed. Nothing, sweetheart. We're just going to hang out upstairs for a bit. But my book report. We'll finish it later, I promise. They reached Lena's room. Claire locked the door and pulled the curtains closed. Through the floor, she could hear movement. Voices. Adrian giving orders to people Claire hadn't even known were in the house. Claire? Lena's voice was small. Is someone trying to hurt you? Claire pulled the little girl close. No one's going to hurt me. Your dad won't let them. Promise? Promise. They sat on Lena's bed, rabbit clutched between them, and waited while the house prepared for war. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters when Claire arrived, cameras flashing like strobe lights, voices shouting questions she couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. Sarah walked beside her, one hand firm on her elbow, cutting through the crowd with the kind of authority that made people step aside without realizing they were doing it. Don't look at them, Sarah said. Don't say anything. Just keep walking. Claire kept her eyes forward, focusing on the doors ahead. Behind her, 2 of Adrian's security team flanked them, creating a buffer between her and the press that had somehow gotten wind of the hearing. Of course they had. Evan would have made sure of it, would have fed them just enough information to make this a spectacle. Inside, the courthouse was quieter, but no less intimidating. Marble floors, high ceilings, the particular smell of old buildings and legal drama. Sarah guided her through security, down a hallway, into a small conference room. Wait here, Sarah said. I need to check in with the clerk. Don't leave this room. She disappeared, and Claire sat alone in a chair that was uncomfortable by design, staring at the wall and trying not to think about what was coming. The door opened. Claire looked up, expecting Sarah. Evan stood in the doorway. He looked like he always looked. Perfect suit, perfect hair, perfect mask of control. But his eyes were different, darker, dangerous in a way she'd only seen a handful of times in 8 years. Claire. She stood so fast the chair scraped against the floor. You're not supposed to be here. It's a public building. I can be wherever I want. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. We need to talk. No, we don't. Yes, we do. His voice was calm. Too calm. the voice he used right before he exploded. You've made your point. You've embarrassed me, humiliated me in front of everyone we know. Fine, you're angry. I understand that. Claire's hands curled into fists. You don't understand anything. Then help me understand. He moved closer. Not threatening exactly, but close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. Tell me what you want. You want an apology? I'm sorry. You want me to admit I was wrong at the party? I was. I had too much to drink, and I said things I shouldn't have said. You meant every word. I was angry. People say things when they're angry. You've been saying things for 8 years, Evan. This wasn't a one-time mistake. His jaw tightened. So what? You're just going to throw away our entire marriage? Everything we built together? We didn't build anything. You built your career. I was just the accessory who made you look stable. That's not true. Isn't it? Claire's voice rose despite her best efforts to stay calm. Tell me one thing I've done in the last 8 years that wasn't about making you look good. One thing that was mine. Evan stared at her, and the fact that he couldn't answer was answer enough. This is insane, he said finally. You're being irrational, emotional. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. No, you're listening to whatever that lawyer's been telling you, filling your head with ideas about independence and freedom and whatever other feminist bullshit she's selling. He reached for her hand. Claire jerked back. Come home, Claire. We can work this out. Marriage counseling, whatever you want. But this divorce is humiliating both of us. I don't care about being humiliated anymore. You should. Because when this is over, when you've burned through whatever money you think you're going to get, you'll have nothing. No friends. No reputation. No one's going to want the woman who destroyed Evan Bennett's marriage. Claire laughed. It came out bitter and sharp. You really think that's what scares me? That people won't want me? It should, because that's exactly what's going to happen. His voice dropped, became almost gentle, almost kind. I'm trying to help you here. Trying to save you from making the biggest mistake of your life. Come home. Drop this nonsense. We'll tell everyone you had a breakdown, that you're getting help. No one has to know how bad it got. How bad what got? Your mental state, the instability, the erratic behavior. He said it like he was reciting facts, like he actually believed it. I have documentation, Claire. Emails from you that sound unhinged, text messages, witnesses who will testify that you've been acting strangely for months. Cold spread through Claire's chest. You're lying. I'm protecting myself. And I'm giving you one last chance to protect yourself too. He pulled out his phone, pulled up something, and turned it toward her. Look. It was an email from her account. Rambling and disconnected and absolutely nothing like anything she'd ever written. I didn't send that. You did. 3 weeks ago. 2 a.m. You don't remember because you were drunk. I wasn't drunk. I never... Claire stopped. Stared at the email. At the timestamp. 3 weeks ago, she'd been asleep by 10 because Evan had insisted they needed to be up early for some charity breakfast. She'd never sent this. You wrote that. You have my password. You sent that from my account. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Evan's expression hardened. See, this is what I'm talking about. The paranoia. The conspiracy theories. You're not well, Claire. And if you insist on going through with this divorce, I'm going to have to make sure the judge understands exactly how unwell you are. The door opened. Sarah stood there with 2 security guards, her expression carved from ice. Mr. Bennett, you need to leave. Now. And turned all smooth charm and easy confidence. I'm just talking to my wife. Your wife has a restraining order against you. Being in this room with her is a violation. Sarah stepped aside. Security will escort you out. If you come near her again, I'll have you arrested. For just a second, Evan's mask slipped. Claire saw the rage underneath. The cold, calculating fury of a man who just realized he was losing control. Then he smiled. See you in court, Claire. He left. The security guards followed. Sarah closed the door and turned to Claire. You okay? Claire was shaking. He forged emails. From my account. He's going to say I'm crazy. I know. We expected this. How can you be calm? He's going to destroy me. He's going to try. Sarah sat down across from her. But here's what he doesn't know. We've been monitoring his communications for the past week. We know he's been in contact with a private investigator who specializes in digging up dirt on divorce targets. We know he's been moving money out of joint accounts into ones you don't have access to. And we know he hired a reputation management firm to start planning stories about your supposed mental breakdown. Claire stared at her. How do you know all that? Because Adrian has better investigators than your husband has money to pay his. Sarah pulled out her own phone, showed Claire a screen full of transcripts and financial records. Everything Evan's doing to bury you, we're documenting. And when we get in front of that judge, we're going to show her exactly what kind of man your husband is. The hearing was worse than Claire had imagined. Evan's lawyer was a man named Richard Cross, silver-haired and expensive, with the kind of voice that made everything he said sound reasonable, even when it was a blatant lie. Your Honor, my client is deeply concerned about his wife's mental state. Over the past several months, Mrs. Bennett has exhibited increasingly erratic behavior. She's made wild accusations against my client, spent money recklessly, and on the night in question, fled a public event in what can only be described as a psychotic episode. Claire sat next to Sarah, trying not to react, trying not to let them see how much this hurt. Judge Maria Castellano was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie lawyers could tell and wasn't impressed by any of them. Mr. Cross, those are serious allegations. Do you have evidence? We do, Your Honor. Cross handed a folder to the clerk. Emails from Mrs. Bennett showing paranoid ideation, text messages that are frankly incomprehensible, and affidavits from multiple witnesses attesting to her unstable behavior. Sarah stood. Your Honor, if I may. Those emails were sent from Mrs. Bennett's account, but there's significant evidence they weren't written by her. My client's husband has had access to her passwords and devices throughout their marriage. We believe he fabricated this evidence to support a narrative that allows him to maintain financial control. That's a baseless accusation, Cross said smoothly. Is it? Sarah produced her own folder. Because we have transcripts of Mr. Bennett's communications with a firm that specializes in what they call reputation management, including several emails where Mr. Bennett specifically asks how to make his wife appear unstable to a family court judge. The courtroom went very quiet. Judge Castellano held out her hand. The clerk brought her Sarah's folder. She read through it in silence, her expression never changing. Mr. Cross, I'm going to need more than forged emails and bought testimony to convince me that Mrs. Bennett is anything other than a woman trying to leave a controlling marriage. Cross's smooth confidence cracked slightly. Your Honor, my client is the victim here. His wife abandoned him without warning, has been refusing all contact, and is being advised by attorneys with a known bias against men in divorce proceedings. Counselor, if you're about to suggest that I'm biased because I'm a woman, I'd reconsider that strategy. Judge Castellano's voice was dry. Now let's talk about the restraining order. Mrs. Voss, your petition claims Mr. Bennett poses a credible threat to your client's safety. Support that. Sarah stood again. Mr. Bennett has a documented history of controlling behavior. He monitors his wife's communications, controls her access to money, has isolated her from friends and family, and as of this morning, violated the temporary restraining order by confronting her in a courthouse conference room. But that was a conversation, Cross interjected, between husband and wife. That was witness intimidation, Sarah shot back, and we have security footage to prove it. Judge Castellano looked at Evan. Mr. Bennett, did you approach your wife this morning despite being served with a restraining order? Evan stood, all polished contrition. Your Honor, I wanted to talk to my wife, to try to resolve this without dragging it through court. I thought if we could just communicate. That's a yes. The judge made a note. Mr. Bennett, the restraining order is clear. You are to have no contact with your wife. No direct contact, no indirect contact, no contact through third parties. If you violate this order again, I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Good. She turned to Sarah. Mrs. Voss, I'm granting your petition for temporary support. Mr. Bennett will maintain all existing financial obligations and provide Mrs. Bennett with reasonable living expenses pending the outcome of these proceedings. I'm also granting exclusive use of the marital residence to Mrs. Bennett. Claire's breath caught. The house. She'd get the house. Except she didn't want it. Didn't want to set foot in that place ever again. Your Honor, she heard herself say, I don't want the house. Judge Castellano looked at her. Mrs. Bennett, it's your marital property. You're entitled to it. I understand, but I don't want it. I just want the divorce. Evan's lawyer looked like Christmas had come early. Your Honor, if Mrs. Bennett is willing to waive her claim to the residence— I didn't say she was waiving anything, Sarah interrupted. My client is stating a preference. The house can be sold, and the proceeds divided, or Mr. Bennett can buy out her share. But she's not giving up her claim. The judge nodded. Noted. We'll address property division in the settlement negotiations. Is there anything else? Yes, Your Honor? Sarah's voice went cold. We'd like to address Mr. Bennett's recent financial transfers. In the past 10 days, he's moved approximately $4 million from joint accounts to offshore holdings my client can't access. Cross was on his feet. Those are legitimate business investments. They're an attempt to hide assets. Sarah handed over another folder. We're requesting the court freeze all of Mr. Bennett's accounts pending a full financial disclosure. The judge read through the new evidence. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture did. She looked at Evan like she was reassessing everything she'd thought about this case. Mr. Bennett, did you move $4 million out of joint accounts in the past 10 days? Evan's jaw tightened. I made some investment decisions. That's a yes. Judge Castellano's voice was sharp. Mr. Cross, your client has 30 days to provide a complete accounting of all marital assets. If I find that he's hidden or transferred money to avoid equitable distribution, I will not be pleased. And Mr. Bennett, all accounts are frozen as of right now. You want to spend money, you get court approval first. Understood? Your Honor, that's— Understood? Evan's hands curled into fists on the table. Yes, Your Honor. Good. We're adjourned. I'll see you all back here in 30 days. The gavel came down. Claire sat frozen in her chair while the courtroom emptied around her. She'd won. Or at least, she'd won this round. The restraining order held, the accounts were frozen. Evan couldn't hide his money or intimidate her or make her disappear into the unstable wife narrative he'd been building. Claire, Sarah's hand on her shoulder. We need to go, before the press gets hold of you. They left through a back exit, avoiding the cameras. Adrian's car waited in the underground parking garage, the driver already behind the wheel. Claire slid into the back seat and felt the adrenaline crash hit her like a physical blow. Her hands shook, her whole body shook. Sarah got in beside her. You did good in there. I barely said anything. You stood up to him. That's what mattered. The car pulled out into traffic. He's going to escalate. Today was a loss for him. He's not used to losing. I know. I mean it, Claire. He's going to get worse before this is over. Claire leaned her head back against the seat and closed her eyes. Let him try. I'm not going back. The estate felt like sanctuary when they arrived. Claire went straight to her room, stripped off the conservative dress Sarah had insisted she wear to court, and stood under a shower hot enough to scald. She'd done it. Had stood in a courtroom across from Evan and hadn't broken. Hadn't backed down. Hadn't let him convince her she was crazy or irrational or making a mistake. But the cost of it sat heavy in her chest. The look on his face when the judge ruled against him. The cold fury in his eyes when he'd realized he couldn't control this. Sarah was right. He was going to escalate. Claire dried off and dressed in comfortable clothes, then made her way downstairs. She could hear voices in the kitchen. Lena's bright chatter, Adrian's lower rumble, the smell of something cooking. Normal, like the past 6 hours in court had happened in a different universe. She found them exactly where she expected. Lena at the island doing homework, papers and pencils scattered everywhere. Adrian at the stove making what looked like stir-fry. Claire! Lena looked up, beaming. You're home. Papa's making dinner. It's Chinese night. So I see. Claire slid onto a stool. How was school? Good. We learned about fractions. They're weird. Lena went back to her math worksheet. Do you know about fractions? A little. Can you help me? Papa's helping, but he's cooking and he keeps forgetting where we were. I don't forget, Adrian protested. I'm just distracted by the fact that you don't show your work. But I did it in my head. Show your work anyway. Claire found herself smiling despite everything. She leaned over Lena's shoulder, looking at the worksheet. Okay, so what's confusing you? They worked through fractions while Adrian cooked, Lena's frustration gradually giving way to understanding. By the time dinner was ready, she'd finished the whole worksheet and was proud enough to demand Adrian put it on the refrigerator immediately. They ate at the island again. Chinese takeout on real plates. Lena told a long, involved story about a boy in her class who'd gotten in trouble for bringing a lizard to school. A live lizard? Claire asked. Yes, in his backpack, and it got out during reading time, and Mrs. Patterson screamed. Adrian shook his head. That kid's going to give his teachers heart attacks. He's just scientific, Lena said seriously. Like Papa. Papa knows about lizards. I know a little about a lot of things. Doesn't mean I bring them to school. After dinner, Lena went upstairs to read before bed. Adrian started cleaning up. Claire moved to help without thinking about it. You don't have to do that, Adrian said. I know. I want to. They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, loading the dishwasher, wiping down counters, domestic routines that felt strange and normal at the same time. Sarah called while you were upstairs, Adrian said finally. Told me about court. We won. This round. But Evan's not done. I know. Claire dried her hands on a towel. Sarah said the same thing. She's right. Adrian leaned against the counter, studying her. He's going to come at you harder now. Try to make you look incompetent or unstable or whatever narrative he thinks will stick. Let him. I'm done being afraid. I'm not saying you should be afraid. I'm saying you should be prepared. He crossed his arms. Evan's got resources, got connections, and he's motivated by the kind of rage that makes men do stupid, dangerous things. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're up against. His voice was gentle but firm. This doesn't end until he either gives up or gets what he wants. And men like Evan don't give up. Then what do I do? You keep fighting. Keep letting Sarah handle the legal stuff. Keep staying here where he can't get to you. Adrian's expression hardened. And you trust me when I say I won't let him touch you. Claire believed him. That was the strange part. She barely knew this man, but she believed him absolutely when he said he'd keep her safe. Why do you care so much? She asked quietly. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Because someone should have cared enough to keep Sophia safe. Should have seen the signs. Should have stopped her from going back to him. She went back? 3 times. And every time I thought she'd finally made it out. Finally gotten free. His jaw was tight. The 4th time, she didn't survive long enough for a 5th. Claire's chest ached. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just don't make the same mistake. He pushed off the counter. Lena's probably waiting for her story. You want to do the honors tonight? It was a subject change, a clear one, but Claire let it happen. Yeah, I'd like that. Lena was already in bed when Claire got upstairs, the Lost Princess book waiting on the nightstand. You came. Lena scooted over to make room. I was hoping you would. Claire sat on the edge of the bed and picked up the book. Ready? Wait. Lena looked up at her, suddenly serious. Are you still sad? A little, but I'm getting better. Good. Lena snuggled deeper under her blanket. Papa says sometimes the sad never goes all the way away, but it gets smaller. Is that happening for you? Yeah, sweetheart. It's getting smaller. Okay, Lena smiled. You can start now. Claire read until Lena's eyes drooped, until her breathing evened out and sleep took her under. She closed the book and sat for a moment, watching this little girl who'd lost her mother and somehow still had enough trust left to let a stranger into her bedtime routine. Adrian was waiting in the hallway again when she emerged. She asleep? Yeah. They stood in the quiet hallway. Somewhere a clock ticked. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Thank you, Adrian said, for being good to her. She makes it easy. She does. He ran a hand through his hair. Listen, I know this situation is weird. You living here, getting involved in my kid's life, if it's too much, it's not. Claire surprised herself by meaning it. Actually, it's the most normal I've felt in years. Adrian's expression softened. Yeah? Yeah. She smiled slightly. Turns out family dinners and bedtime stories are pretty good therapy. Better than a courtroom, anyway. Definitely better than a courtroom. They said goodnight, and Claire went back to her suite. But sleep didn't come easily. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Evan's face in that conference room. The the cold calculation in his eyes when he'd shown her the forged emails. He wasn't going to stop. Sarah was right. Adrian was right. This was just beginning. Her new phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. You think you're safe. You're not. I know where you are. I know who's helping you. And when this is over, you're going to regret every choice you've made. Claire's blood went cold. She grabbed the phone, her hands shaking, and walked down the hallway to Adrian's study. Light still showed under the door. She knocked. Come in. Adrian was at his desk, working on something on his laptop. He looked up, and whatever he saw on her face made him stand immediately. What happened? Claire handed him the phone without speaking. Adrian read the text. His expression went flat and dangerous. When did this come in? Just now. He pulled out his own phone, made a call. Marcus, I need a trace on a number. Yeah, now. He rattled off the number from the text. And I want to know how he got this number in the first place. He listened to whatever Marcus said, his jaw getting tighter. Fine, do it. I want to know everything by morning. He ended the call and looked at Claire. It's a burner phone, untraceable, but we'll find him. He knows where I am, Claire whispered. No, he doesn't. He's guessing, trying to scare you. It's working. Adrian set the phone down and crossed to her. Claire, look at me. She did. He can't get to you here. This place is a fortress. Security on every entrance, cameras everywhere, people who know their jobs. A text is just words. He can't touch you. He found my number, and we'll figure out how and plug that leak. But in the meantime, you're safe. I promise you that. Claire wanted to believe him, but Evan's words echoed in her head. I know where you are. I know who's helping you. What if he's not bluffing? She asked. What if he really does know? Then he's an idiot, because coming here would be the worst mistake he could make. Adrian's voice was cold. I've dealt with men like Evan before. They're all the same. They think money and connections make them untouchable. They're wrong. You sound very sure of that. I am. He moved back to his desk, pulled out a folder. You want to know who I am, Claire? What I actually do? Here. He handed her the folder. Inside were documents, financial records, legal filings, names she recognized from the news. You destroy people, Claire said slowly, reading through the papers. I destroy people who deserve it, people who hurt others and think they can buy their way out of consequences. Adrian leaned against his desk. That's what I do. That's who I am. And your husband threatening you on a burner phone is exactly the kind of stupid move that's going to make this easier. Claire looked up at him. Easier how? Because now we have evidence that he's trying to intimidate you, violating the restraining order, making threats. Adrian's smile was sharp. Sarah's going to love this. He was right. When Sarah arrived the next morning and saw the text, her expression went from professional to predatory in about 3 seconds. This is perfect. Perfect? Claire stared at her. He's threatening me. He's hanging himself. Sarah took screenshots of the text. We take this to the judge, show her that Evan's not just controlling, he's actively trying to intimidate you during divorce proceedings. This is exactly what we need to prove our case. But he used a burner phone. You can't prove it's him. We don't have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. We just have to show that the text came in the middle of contentious divorce proceedings, contained specific threats, and references information only your husband would have. Sarah's smile was sharp. A judge is going to draw the obvious conclusion. Over the next week, things escalated exactly like Sarah and Adrian had predicted. More texts from burner phones. Flowers delivered to the estate with unsigned cards. A private investigator caught on the property line with a telephoto lens. Each incident was documented, photographed, reported. Each one added to the mounting evidence that Evan Bennett was a man losing control. And then, on a Thursday afternoon 2 weeks after the court hearing, everything came to a head. Claire was in the garden with Lena, helping her plant bulbs that would bloom in the spring. The afternoon was cold but clear, the kind of late autumn day that felt like the world holding its breath before winter. These will be tulips, Lena said seriously, placing a bulb in the hole they'd dug. Red ones, they're Papa's favorite. How do you know that? Mama planted them every year. Papa says they remind him of her. Claire's chest tightened. That's a nice memory. Yeah, Lena patted dirt over the bulb. Do you think she can see us? From wherever she is? I think if she can, she's very proud of you. Lena smiled. I hope so. A shout from the house made them both look up. One of the security team was running across the lawn toward them. Inside, now! Claire grabbed Lena's hand and ran, her heart hammering. Behind her, she could hear cars, multiple vehicles coming up the drive fast. They made it to the house. Security pulled them inside and locked the doors. What's happening? Claire demanded. Breach at the front gate. 3 vehicles. They rammed through. Evan. It had to be Evan. Where's Adrian? On his way. Stay here. The security guard moved to the windows, speaking into his radio in clipped professional tones. Lena clung to Claire's hand, her eyes wide. Is someone trying to hurt us? No, baby. We're safe. I promise. Outside, the vehicle skidded to a stop in the circular drive. Men got out, 6 of them. Not Evan. Hired muscle. The kind of men who did violence for money. Claire's blood ran cold. They were here for her. Evan had sent them to take her. And she was trapped in a house with a 7-year-old girl and a security team that was outnumbered 2-1. The security guard's radio crackled. A voice came through, calm and controlled despite the chaos outside. All units, hold position. Do not engage unless they breach the house. Backup is 3 minutes out. 3 minutes. Claire's mind raced through the math. 6 men outside. 3 security guards inside that she knew of. Lena pressed against her side, trembling but silent. Take her upstairs, the guard said to Claire without taking his eyes off the windows. There's a safe room in Mr. Moretti's office, behind the bookshelf on the north wall. Go, now. Claire didn't argue. She scooped Lena up even though the girl was getting too big to carry and ran for the stairs. Behind her, she heard the front door rattle. Heard voices shouting, heard the guard speaking into his radio again, calling for immediate backup. Adrian's office was at the end of the hall. Claire burst through the door, slammed it behind her, and looked frantically at the bookshelves. North wall. Which way was north? The window. The window faced the gardens. That was south. So north was... She found it. A section of shelving that looked identical to the rest, but had a small keypad hidden behind a decorative box. Claire set Lena down and punched in the only number that made sense, Lena's birthday, which she'd heard Adrian mention a dozen times. The bookshelf clicked and swung inward, revealing a small room lined with monitors showing security feeds from every angle of the property. Inside, Claire said, pushing Lena gently through the door. What about Papa? He's coming, I promise. Claire hoped that was true. Hoped Adrian was actually on his way and not just something the guard had said to keep her calm. She pulled the bookshelf closed behind them. The door locked automatically with a heavy thunk that sounded final. The safe room was small but well equipped. Monitors showing the grounds, a phone mounted on the wall, bottles of water, a first aid kit. This wasn't something Adrian had built on a whim. This was planned, prepared for. How many times had he needed a room like this? On the monitors, Claire could see the 6 men spreading out around the house. They weren't trying to break in yet, just positioning themselves, blocking exits, surrounding the place like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. This was private property, miles from anything. Even if someone called the police, response time would be 20 minutes minimum. Lena climbed into Claire's lap, and Claire wrapped her arms around the girl, trying to stop shaking, trying to be the calm, stable thing Lena needed right now. Tell me a story, Lena whispered. Like the princess book. I don't have the book, sweetheart. You know it by heart. You've read it to me every night. She was right. Claire had read it so many times the words were burned into her memory. So she started talking, quiet and steady, telling the story of a lost princess who found her way home, watching the monitors over Lena's head, watching those men circle the house like wolves. On screen, a new set of vehicles appeared at the broken gate, not ramming through, just pulling up and stopping. Men got out, more of them. But these moved differently, professionally, like soldiers. Adrian's backup. The 6 men around the house saw them too, started regrouping, realizing this wasn't going to be as easy as they'd thought. Then another car appeared, a town car that Claire recognized. Adrian got out, calm as if he was arriving for dinner instead of a hostage situation. Papa! Lena pressed her hands against the monitor showing the front drive. Claire's heart was in her throat. What is he doing? Adrian walked straight toward the men with the kind of confidence that made them hesitate, made them look at each other uncertainly. You've got about 30 seconds to get back in your vehicles and leave. Adrian's voice came through the monitors clearly. The safe room had audio feeds. After that, I'm going to assume you're here to commit a felony on my property, and I'm going to respond accordingly. One of the men stepped forward, big, muscular, the kind who was used to intimidating people with his size. We're here for Claire Bennett. Hand her over, and we leave. Nobody gets hurt. Interesting offer. Here's mine. You leave right now, and I don't press charges for trespassing, property damage, and attempted kidnapping. Adrian's voice didn't change. Still calm, still controlled. You've got 20 seconds. We're not leaving without her. Then you're not leaving. The man lunged, fast for his size. But Adrian was faster. He sidestepped, caught the man's arm, and used his momentum to send him crashing face first into the gravel drive. The other 5 moved at once. What happened next was chaos captured in high definition on multiple camera angles. Adrian's security team engaged. Professionally trained men against hired thugs who'd probably never faced real opposition in their lives. It was over in less than 2 minutes. All 6 men on the ground, some unconscious, some groaning, all of them neutralized. Adrian stood in the middle of it, not even breathing hard, and pulled out his phone. Marcus, we're going to need police out here after all. And make sure they bring enough vehicles for 6 arrests. He paused, listening. Yeah. Attempted kidnapping. We've got it all on camera, every second. He ended the call and looked directly at one of the cameras, at the one that fed into the safe room. Claire, you can come out now. It's over. Claire didn't move for a long moment, just sat there holding Lena, trying to process what she'd just witnessed. Is Papa okay? Lena asked. Yeah, baby, he's fine. More than fine. He'd just taken down 6 men like it was nothing. They emerged from the safe room to find Adrian waiting in his office. He looked rumpled but unharmed. His jacket was off, his shirt sleeves rolled up, but there wasn't a mark on him. Lena launched herself at him. Papa, you were so cool. You were like a superhero. I'm not a superhero, princess, just prepared. He held her tight, his eyes on Claire over Lena's head. You okay? Claire nodded, not trusting her voice. The police are on their way. They're going to want statements from everyone. Sarah's coming too. This is going to be a long night. He was right. The police arrived with sirens and questions. The 6 men were arrested and loaded into vehicles. Sarah showed up with more lawyers and enough recorder devices to document everything 3 times over. Claire told her story to 4 different officers, described the texts, the flowers, the escalating threats, explained how she'd run to the safe room when the men arrived. By the time it was all done, it was past midnight. Lena had fallen asleep on the couch in Adrian's office, wrapped in a blanket Mrs. Chen had brought. Sarah cornered Claire in the hallway outside. This is it. This is what we needed. What do you mean? Your husband hired men to kidnap you. We've got them on camera. We've got their statements. And trust me, they're already flipping on who hired them. By tomorrow morning, Evan Bennett is going to be arrested for conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Sarah's smile was sharp. He's done. Finished. Even his lawyers won't be able to save him from this. Claire slid down the wall until she was sitting on the floor, her legs suddenly unable to hold her. It's really over? The criminal case is just starting, but the divorce? Yeah, no judge is going to side with a man who tried to have his wife abducted. Sarah sat down beside her. You won, Claire. You actually won. Claire started crying, couldn't help it. Weeks of fear and stress and barely holding it together just crashed through her all at once. Sarah didn't try to comfort her or tell her to stop, just sat there while Claire broke down in a hallway, finally letting herself feel everything she'd been pushing down. When the tears finally stopped, Sarah handed her a tissue. Better? No, but I will be. Yeah, you will. Sarah stood, offered Claire a hand up. Go get some sleep. We'll handle the rest in the morning. Claire found Adrian in his office, Lena still asleep on the couch. He'd poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey and was standing at the window, staring out at nothing. She okay? Claire asked quietly. She slept through most of it. She'll have questions in the morning, but for tonight she's fine. He turned to look at Claire. You? Sarah says it's over. Says Evan's going to be arrested. He will be. My people found the paper trail. Evan hired those men through a security company that specializes in corporate espionage and asset recovery. Except Claire Bennett isn't an asset. Adrian's voice was cold. She's a person, and trying to kidnap her is a felony. How did you know? Claire asked. How did you know this was going to happen? I didn't, not specifically, but I know men like Evan, know how they think. When the legal options stop working, they escalate. He took a drink. I made sure we were ready when he did. You planned this, the security, the safe room, the backup team. Claire moved closer. You set a trap. I protected you. There's a difference. Is there? Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. You think I'm like him, like Evan? No. I think you're someone who's very good at controlling situations, at making sure things go the way you want them to go. Claire crossed her arms. I'm just trying to figure out if I should be grateful or terrified. Be grateful. Because if I hadn't planned for this, you'd be in the back of a van right now heading somewhere your husband could make you disappear. His voice was hard. I'm not like Evan. I don't control people. I protect them. There's a difference even if you can't see it yet. Then help me see it. Adrian set down his glass. Evan controlled you because it gave him power. Made him feel big. I protect people because someone should have protected Sophia and didn't. That's the difference. One's about ego. One's about trying to make sure the people I care about don't end up dead. The people I care about. The words hung in the air between them. You care about me? Claire asked quietly. Yeah, I do. He said it simply, like it was obvious. You're not just some project, Claire, you're... He stopped, shook his head. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're safe, that your husband's going to jail, that this is over. It does matter, Claire said. It matters to me. They stood in the quiet office, Lena sleeping peacefully on the couch, the house settling around them. Outside, police lights still flashed, but inside, everything felt still. I should let you sleep, Adrian said finally. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. He was right, but Claire didn't want to leave yet, didn't want to go back to her suite alone with her thoughts, and the adrenaline crash that was coming. Can I stay here, she asked. Just for a while. I don't want to be alone right now. Adrian gestured to the chair across from his desk. Stay as long as you want. They sat in comfortable silence, Adrian at his desk, pretending to work on his laptop, Claire in the chair, watching Lena sleep and trying to process the fact that it was actually over. Evan was going to be arrested. The divorce would go through. She'd be free. Free. The word felt foreign, like something she'd forgotten the shape of. What do I do now? Claire asked into the quiet. Adrian looked up. Whatever you want. That's the point of being free. I don't even know what that looks like anymore. You'll figure it out. His voice was gentle. You've got time. No rush, no pressure. Just possibilities. Claire wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe there was a life waiting for her beyond the divorce and the fear and the constant looking over her shoulder. But she'd been living in survival mode for so long that imagining anything else felt impossible. Dawn was breaking gray and cold when Claire finally went upstairs. She slept for a few hours, dreamless and exhausted, and woke to her phone ringing. Sarah's name on the screen. Turn on the news, Sarah said without preamble. Channel 7. Claire found the remote and turned on the television in her suite. Channel 7 was in the middle of a breaking news report. Evan's face filled the screen. Not his polished publicity photo, his booking photo, looking haggard and furious and completely out of control. Prominent Chicago financier Evan Bennett was arrested this morning on charges of conspiracy to commit kidnapping, the anchor said. According to police, Bennett hired 6 men to abduct his estranged wife from a private residence. The attempted kidnapping was thwarted by security personnel, and all 6 men are also in custody. Bennett is being held without bail pending arraignment. Claire stared at the screen, at Evan in handcuffs, at the man who'd controlled every aspect of her life for 8 years looking powerless and small. You still there? Sarah asked. Yeah. His lawyers are already trying to spin this, claiming it was a misunderstanding, that he just wanted to talk to you and the security company overstepped. Sarah's voice was dry. It's not going to work. We've got too much evidence. But he's going to fight. How long? Months, maybe longer. But he's not getting out of this, Claire. Even if he somehow beats the kidnapping charge, we've got enough for the divorce. You're going to be free of him. Free. There was that word again. Thank you, Claire said, for everything. Thank me when it's over. For now, just keep breathing. The next weeks were a blur of legal proceedings and media attention. Evan's arrest made national news. The story had everything reporters loved: wealth, power, a controlling husband, an attempted kidnapping thwarted by private security. Claire stayed at the estate, away from the cameras and the questions. Adrian's lawyers handled the press. Sarah handled the legal side. And Claire tried to figure out who she was when she wasn't being Evan's wife. It was harder than it should have been. She'd spent 8 years molding herself around Evan's expectations. 8 years making herself smaller and quieter and more convenient. Unlearning that took time. But she had time. And she had space. And she had people who actually cared whether she was okay. Adrian gave her room to breathe, but never disappeared completely. He was just there. A steady presence in the background of her healing. Never pushing. Never demanding. Just existing in her orbit and letting her decide how close she wanted to be. Lena was less subtle. The girl had decided Claire was part of their family, and that was that. She dragged Claire to school events and art projects and insisted Claire had to approve every outfit before Lena would wear it. Mrs. Chen quietly made sure Claire ate proper meals and slept enough and had everything she needed before she knew she needed it. It felt like family, like the kind of family Claire had thought she'd have when she married Evan, but had never actually gotten. 6 weeks after the attempted kidnapping, Claire sat in a courtroom watching Evan take a plea deal. Conspiracy to commit kidnapping in exchange for a reduced sentence. 5 years. Eligible for parole in 3. It wasn't enough. Would never be enough for what he'd done. But it was over. The divorce was finalized a week later. Claire signed papers that officially ended her marriage and granted her a settlement that would keep her comfortable for the rest of her life. She walked out of the courthouse a free woman. Sarah hugged her on the steps. You did it. We did it. Nope. This was you. You're the one who ran, who fought, who didn't back down when he tried to break you. Sarah smiled. I just handled the paperwork. Claire drove back to the estate feeling lighter than she had in years. The house appeared at the end of the drive, and for the first time, it felt like coming home instead of hiding. Adrian was in the kitchen when she arrived, making dinner with Lena's help. They looked up when she walked in. It's done, Claire said. It's over. I'm divorced. Lena cheered and launched herself at Claire. Does that mean you're staying? Claire caught her, holding tight. If that's okay with your dad. More than okay, Adrian said quietly. Stay as long as you want. That night, after Lena was asleep and the house was quiet, Claire found Adrian in his study. Can we talk? He looked up from his work. Always. Claire sat down across from him, trying to find the right words. I want to stay. Not just for a while. Actually stay. Okay. But I need to know what that means. What we are. Because I've been living here for 2 months and we've never actually talked about it. Adrian leaned back in his chair. What do you want it to mean? That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got. He met her eyes. I'm not going to tell you how to feel, Claire. You've had 8 years of someone telling you what to think and feel and want. I'm not doing that to you. I'm not asking you to tell me what to feel. I'm asking you to tell me what you feel. He was quiet for a long moment. I care about you. More than I probably should given how we met. And I want you to stay. But only if that's what you actually want. Not because you feel obligated or because you don't have anywhere else to go. I want to stay, Claire said. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Because when I think about leaving, about finding my own place and starting over somewhere else, all I can think is that I don't want to leave you and Lena. Claire, let me finish. She took a breath. I know this is fast. I know I'm barely divorced and probably shouldn't be making decisions about relationships. But I also know that for the first time in my life, I feel like I can breathe, like I'm allowed to take up space, and that's because of you. Adrian stood and moved around the desk, sat in the chair beside her instead of across from her. I'm not him. I'm never going to be him. But I'm also not perfect. I've got my own damage, my own issues. Sophia's death broke something in me that hasn't fully healed. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm looking for real. Then here's real. He took her hand. I want you here. Want you in my life, in Lena's life. And if you need time to figure out what that looks like for you, I'll give you all the time in the world. What if I don't need time? Claire asked. What if I already know? Then tell me. I want this. Want you. Want to be part of this family you and Lena have built. She squeezed his hand. I want to stay. Actually stay. Not as a guest, as someone who belongs here. Adrian's expression softened in a way she'd rarely seen. You already belong here. You have since the night I found you in that cafe. He kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper, like he'd been holding back for weeks and had finally been given permission to stop. When they pulled apart, Claire was smiling. So what now? Now we take it one day at a time. No rush, no pressure. Just us figuring this out together. I can do that. They sat in the quiet study, hands linked, and Claire felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like peace. The next months were the best of Claire's life. She enrolled in classes at a local college, studying business administration because she wanted to understand money and power and control in a way that had nothing to do with being someone's wife. She helped Lena with homework and school projects, attended parent-teacher conferences with Adrian, and felt a fierce pride when Lena's teacher praised how much the girl had blossomed. She planted a garden in the spring with Lena's help, tulips and roses and flowers that would bloom year after year. And she fell in love with Adrian, really, truly, completely in love in a way that had nothing to do with convenience or control and everything to do with choosing each other every single day. They didn't rush, took their time, let the relationship develop naturally instead of forcing it into some predetermined shape. But 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Adrian asked her to marry him, not with a grand gesture or a public proposal, just the two of them in the garden, watching Lena chase fireflies in the twilight. Marry me, he said simply. Not because you need me, because you want to. Yes, yes, Claire said. Yes, I want to. They married in the spring by the lake that bordered the estate grounds. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. Lena served as flower girl and cried happy tears when Claire officially became her stepmother. Sarah attended with a satisfied smile, like she'd personally orchestrated the whole thing. Mrs. Chen made a 5-tier cake and declared it the best wedding she'd ever seen. And Claire stood beside Adrian, wearing a dress she'd chosen herself, and meant every word of the vows she spoke. This was real. This was hers. This was the life she'd built from the ashes of the one Evan had tried to burn down. That night, after Lena was asleep and the guests had gone home, Claire and Adrian sat on the terrace overlooking the grounds. The house was quiet. The stars were out. Everything felt settled and right. Happy? Adrian asked. Claire leaned against him, his arm around her shoulders. Yeah, I really am. Good. That's all I wanted. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the moon rise over the lake. Claire thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, broken and scared and running through the rain with nowhere to go. And she thought about the woman she was now, strong and whole and exactly where she belonged. It had been a long road, full of fear and pain and moments where she'd almost given up. But she hadn't. She'd fought. She'd survived. She'd built something beautiful from the wreckage. And now, sitting at the quiet night with the man she loved and the daughter she'd gained and the life she'd claimed as her own, Claire finally understood what freedom actually meant. It meant choosing. Every day. Every moment. Choosing the life she wanted instead of accepting the one someone else decided she deserved. It meant being whole instead of small. It meant being loved for who she was instead of what she could provide. It meant home. Claire smiled and let herself sink deeper into Adrian's embrace, into the peace of this moment, into the future that stretched ahead like an open road. She'd run into the rain with nothing and found everything, and she was never letting go.